I took great pride, man.
Yeah.
I remember playing for Santos Laguna. We were champions in Santos Laguna, and I was a big part of that. I remember playing, the CONCACAF Champions League with Santos Laguna against Major League Soccer clubs. And when those clubs would come to El TSM, to Estadio Corona, when they would come to that beautiful stadium, you'd look above. I believe it was the north goal. You'd look above, and there are flags there. The Mexican flag. There was a Ecuadorian flag, a Colombian flag, a Uruguayan flag or Panamanian flag, excuse me, and then there was the American flag. That I was the reason that American flag was on there. So I always took great pride in those things. And like I'll say it again. You were the gringo, but you were their gringo. So
Yeah.
that always, as soon as you proved yourself, was a good thing.
Were you thinking? I mean, I mean, I know how that is to be 18, 19, and just kind of like you may have dreams, but really it's you just kind of just making your way. But did you have? I mean, were you already thinking I'm going to play professionally? I'm going to go to a World Cup. Was that on your mind in 2001?
No, I mean it's funny you say that because I talked about Pachuca and I told you how we were in a hangar with like the bunk beds on each side and the showers, and it was like kids. It was like Lord of the Flies, kids trying to govern themselves. And honestly, it's like the craziest of atmospheres. But within those setups, they try to professionalize those setups. Pachuca till this day still does that. I remember having like sports psychology sessions in Pachuca, and we would go into this room, like my category, my team that I was trying out for, this third division team, and they dim the lights, and the sports psychologist is, with the little sound, the ambiance she's setting it, and she's having you envision what you want out of life, envision where you want to be, and I guarantee you, 99% of those players, people in that room are thinking World Cup, World Cup, World Cup. I'm thinking I just want to make some money. Like that's where my head was at. Like I want to get on this team. I want to make. But it's funny when that you think you mentioned that now, because the first time I really thought World Cup was in the following year, probably months. It was the 2002 World Cup in South Korea
Yeah.
and Japan, where the U.S. men's national team is playing against Mexico. And here I am, and I've been watching the U.S. so closely, and they've got Landon Donovan and DeMarcus Beasley, who are the same age as I am, same age group, 1982, the very first residency program. IMG, this Bradenton Academy that we've always heard about, they were the very first ones. DeMarcus, Landon, that generation went on to I believe it was a U17 World Cup, and they were
Mm-hmm.
fourth place, I think what, third or fourth place in the world. They had
Mm-hmm.
Gucci Aweyu, Kyle Beckerman was part of that setup.
Yeah.
Had some very good players, and I remember thinking to myself, these two kids are my age. They're teenagers, and I'm sitting here at home watching them play, and they're in a fucking World Cup. It, like that to me just read like it's tangible. It like
Right.
opened my eyes.
Well, um, were you a cocky kid as a player? I mean, obviously you're scoring hat tricks in the men's league. Are you when you go down to Mexico? Do you think you're the shit?
No, I
No.
mean, I think I was confident for sure, when I was in the States, because like you said, at your level you're a big fish. So, but even within me being a big fish, I was never the biggest fish. So I always had, like I wasn't the best player growing up in Vegas. That player was a kid named Boomer Alvarez. Boomer played for Chivas USA for like a year or two. Um, I wasn't the most known player coming out of high school. That player was Ruben Quijón. He became like a state senator.
There you go.
In Vegas. So there was always somebody bigger.
Yeah.
And everywhere I went, there was always somebody better. So I never had that. I mean, trust me, I was a confident kid, because that'll come with playing and scoring goals and confident in your ability. But I was humbled really quick in Mexico. Um, One of the things back when I was growing up in the States that we lacked severely in our development was the actual structure. So I was very good at being a goal scorer. I was very bad at the actual principles of being a good footballer, the basics. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
And when I went to Mexico, you learn that very quickly. It's funny. I was just with my daughter at her AYSO game this past weekend. She's a U6 now. She's 5 years old. Um, and we went to this school for the game. And this school is a very nice school, and their mascot is this dragon. There's a wall with a big dragon imprint on there, and there's this little boy, and he's knocking the ball back and forth against this wall. And my daughter just stops and stares at him, like 5 feet away from him, like, what is this kid doing? And I explained to her, and my mind just completely like brought me back to when I was in Mexico. The first moment I got there, they call that a fronton, this wall. And kids before training and after training would go to this fronton and just knock the ball back and forth hundreds, if not thousands of times. Reception, right foot, left foot, instep, laces, juggling in the air, right back to you. And I would explain to her how many times I would do that when I was in Mexico, in Cruz Azul specifically, just training to try to get better as a footballer. But I had to do that because I was so far behind the rest,
Hmm.
like the proper basics, the things that make good footballers. Those things I didn't have. I was faster than everybody, more athletic. I hit the ball way harder than anybody in my age group, or some of the guys who were already first team professionals. I've always had that. I had a knack for scoring goals. My foot, right foot, left foot with my head, but there were certain principles that I was
Yeah.
lacking. So, to answer your question, like, I was humbled very quickly. It was made, it was pointed out and made, and I was made aware of that there were certain things that I was lacking. So that any type of cockiness you did have would go out the window very quick, especially in a small sided drill. I'm thinking to myself, like, holy shit, these guys are like, I'm faster than everybody. Why are they faster than me right now?
Right.
They're thinking faster, the
Mm.
reception is cleaner. The pass from right foot to left foot, so I can't get there, is a lot quicker. So, I
What
realized very quickly.
what were the calls home like? If you got calls home, what were the calls home like? I mean, what did you tell your dad about your experience?
I wanted to go home 100 times in the first month, and this was before the iPhone. This was before
Yeah.
Zoom or Skype. It was like prevalent. I'm calling collect on payphones. Like pay banks. Those phone banks, I should
Yeah.
say. And it was a lot of talking to my parents, talking to my mom, talking to anybody who would talk to me, because you didn't have those outlets. I very much felt like a foreigner. This was all foreign to me. I'd grown up with Mexican culture like instilled in me, spoke the language, ate the food,
Yeah.
but it was a culture shock actually living in Mexico. And I didn't understand it at first. And now it's like one of my most favorite things is like being immersed in that culture. I met my wife in Mexico. My kids will have, two cultures instilled in them as well. But very much in that moment, it was a culture shock.
Yeah. Let's fast forward a little bit. I mean, this Herc is in Mexico trying to get his career started. A couple years later, you're in San Diego. Get us to that point before the breakthrough with the Galaxy.
I would say months later, I'm in San Diego. And I got to this tryout with the San Diego Gauchos, which is like a D3 program. And back then, it would be like USL 2, right?
Yeah.
Now, um, I must have been making like $500 a
Were
month.
mostly college kids in this team then?
No, that was the
No.
great thing. I was the youngest kid on the team. I was 19 years old. Everybody else was second. I mean, they had a job. They had primary jobs. They weren't footballers, but they had a great passion for football. This team was created, and a majority of those guys were school teachers, lawyers, doctors, whatever, and they would train at night after like their 9 to 5 would end. So here I am, like, I was one of the few guys actually paid um, to play, but I was getting like 500
Still a
net a
ringer.
month.
Still a ringer, huh?
The youngest guy on the team, and to actually to so I could survive. I lived with one of the players on the team who was like a player coach, and they got me a job coaching kids. Twice a week I would go do clinics for kids. So excuse me, two times a week I would train kids like an actual team, and then the third day of the week I would do clinics with all these kids within the club. Funny story is one of the kids who was like the crown jewel of the club I used to coach. His name's Paul Ariola.
Yeah, I know who that is.
Yeah, and he was a very good player back then. A very good, like tiny kid, and
You
just
take
he
credit
was
for Paul Ariola's career at this point, Herc?
what once a week for about a few months. I took credit for Fariola. Yeah, but that's what I would do to play football, and it wasn't in, I was just trying to extend my career but have fun at the same time. And I really thought, like, especially meeting those guys and kind of being now with grown-ups, and I didn't think my life would take me into professional football anymore. I just thought I would do football as a way to find something else to do, or as a way to kind of
Did you
do
did you
something else.
did you have something else in mind? I mean, obviously for everybody in America that the idea of college is out there. Were you thinking about a different path before the Galaxy came calling?
Yeah. So when I was playing with the San Diego Gauchos, I had the best time of my life. It was a D3 setup, so we'd go on the road, and on the road, I was with these guys who were grown men. Some of the first times I've ever drank in my life was with these guys. Take me to TJ, take me to Rosarito, Ensenada, show me the ropes and what. So I had this kind of like these big brothers, and all these guys were teachers, and they had summers off, and they had an accessible calendar. And I thought to myself, like, that doesn't seem too bad. So I actually in my mind thought to myself, I'll just get a teacher's credit, teaching degree,
Yeah.
and I'll do that. Glad I didn't do that. I see what some of these teachers have to deal with. But that was in my head what I was going to do, and I almost given up on football. And we played this scrimmage game against the LA Galaxy. It was so bad. I mean, we lost like 7-1. I think Matt Reese. Do you remember Matt Reese, the goalkeeper?
Sure. Yeah.
Matt Reese played on the field, scored twice on us. Like they were, he was very good with his feet. People talk about Nick Rimando.
I remember Matt Reese being
The
good. Yeah.
OG was Matt
Yeah.
Reese. Yeah, with his feet, he was very good. I mean, I run into Matt Reese a bunch here in the South Bay. Good guy, hilarious guy. Uh, little side, just showing you how good he was. Sidebar on here. I remember being in the Rose Bowl in Pasadena, and Matt Reese used to play soccer tennis against everybody in the locker room, beat everybody. He used to smash people. He would do it naked. That's how like he would humiliate players. He would do it naked, but a very good player. Anyways,
Oh
this
man.
game ends 7-1, and Ralph Perez, who was the assistant coach for Siggy Schmidt, the late great Siggy Schmidt at that time, comes up to me and asks me, like, where are you from? How old are you? What's your story? And I'm 19. And I think the youngest kid on that team with the Galaxy was like maybe Ale Moreno, who was like 22, maybe around there. Those guys that incoming, or that rookie year, if you will, they're all like 21, 22, 23. Keeps tabs on me. I finished the season. I had like 17 goals, something like that, in like 17 games. Uh, they invite me to come, train with the team afterwards, after our season's done. And it's like sometime in August or September, and a few guys had actually been seriously injured on the Galaxy. And there's no reserve program, there's no
Yeah.
academy. So literally, I get there, and within like the first week and a half of being there and training, they just signed me as depth. And I signed a developmental contract making shit money. I think like 860 gross a year, but 2 years, I'm sorry, but two months later, excuse me, we win the MLS Cup. So, without me even doing anything, I've got an MLS Cup ring,